What kind of girl says, "I can do it better than a goddess"? Crazy, right? But once upon a time in ancient Greece, there was a girl like that. Her name was Arachne, and her story, it's one of truth, talent, pride, and punishment. This is the mythological story of Arachne, the tale of the girl who was turned into a spider. But don't think this is just some old legend, because deep inside this myth, there's something that still speaks to us today. Arachne was born in a small town called Lydia. Her family wasn't rich, they weren't famous, they worked hard like everyone else. Her father was a dyer, he colored wool in deep reds and purples. But Arachne, she had hands like no one else. She learned how to weave fabric when she was very young. At first, it was just threads and cloth, but soon it became art. She could weave trees with leaves that looked like they were moving. She could weave animals that seemed ready to leap off the fabric. She could even weave the stars. People came from other cities just to watch her work. Some said, "She must be blessed by the gods." Others said, "No human could do this without help from above." And they all whispered one name, Athena. Athena was not just the goddess of wisdom and war, she was also the goddess of weaving. So, of course, people thought maybe Athena had taught Arachne, but Arachne, she didn't agree. One day, when someone said, "Surely the goddess Athena gave you this gift," Arachne laughed and said, "Athena, she has nothing to do with it. I learned everything myself, and honestly, I'm better than her." Yep, she said that, and once that sentence was out, there was no turning back. Now, in ancient Greece, there was no goddess more respected, more feared, or more loved than Athena. Athena wasn't just any goddess, she was the goddess of wisdom, war, and crafts. She was smart, brave, and strong. She taught humans how to build cities, how to farm, and how to fight wisely, not foolishly. And yes, weaving, that was her special art too. People built temples for her. They prayed to her for good ideas, for protection in battle, for success in work. She wasn't a goddess you wanted to make angry, and now, a simple mortal girl, Arachne, had dared to say, "I'm better than Athena." You can imagine what happened next. The news of Arachne's words traveled fast, whispered from one town to another. It rose up the mountains, crossed rivers, floated across valleys, until it reached Olympus, the home of the gods. And Athena heard it. At first, maybe she smiled. A tiny mortal girl, boasting like that? How amusing. But then, Athena's smile faded, because pride, especially against a goddess, was something the gods did not forgive easily. Still, Athena was not cruel by nature. She believed in teaching lessons, not just giving punishments. So she decided to visit Arachne herself. She didn't arrive with thunder and lightning. She didn't show up in a golden chariot. No, Athena disguised herself as an old woman. Her hair was grey, her robe was dusty and plain. She looked just like a tired old traveller stopping by to rest. And she came to Arachne's workshop, where the girl sat proudly at her loom, weaving another perfect tapestry. The old woman leaned on her stick and said,
"My child, you have great talent, but please show respect to the gods. You have skill, but without humility it means nothing."
But Arachne just smiled, not kindly, not shyly. She said, "I don't need to be humble. If Athena thinks she's better than me, let her come here. Let her prove it." The old woman stood straighter. Her dusty robe shimmered and melted away, and before Arachne's eyes, the tired stranger became Athena herself, tall, powerful, radiant, with eyes full of wisdom and anger. The time for words was over. Now it was time for a contest. The room grew silent. The workers, the visitors, everyone froze. No one dared to breathe. There they stood, a young mortal girl and a powerful goddess, both ready to prove who was truly the greatest weaver in the world. Athena pointed to the looms and said, "Let's settle this with our hands, not our words." 2 looms were brought in, side by side. Fresh fine thread was prepared, colors that shone like gold and silver, soft wool as white as clouds, and without another word, they both began to weave. Athena worked quickly, surely. Her tapestry showed the gods in all their shining glory. There was Zeus, king of the gods, ruling the skies with thunder. There was Poseidon, stirring the oceans. There was Apollo, driving his golden sun chariot across the heaven. And at the center, Athena herself, standing tall and wise, crowned with victory. Her weaving was flawless, every thread perfectly placed, every color glowing like magic. Now Arachne, she didn't weave glory. She didn't show the gods as powerful and kind. No, she showed their mistakes, their flaws, their cruelty. She wove scenes where Zeus tricked and lied to humans. She showed Poseidon punishing innocent people in his rage. She showed gods abusing their power, being selfish, unfair. Her tapestry told the truth, a truth few dared to speak. And just like Athena's, Arachne's weaving was perfect, every figure alive with detail, every color richer than the last. You could almost hear the whispering of the people in the woven cloth, the fear, the hope, the disappointment. When they both finished, they stood back. The crowd stared. They didn't know where to look. Both tapestries were beyond anything they had ever seen. For a long moment, Athena said nothing. She stared at Arachne's tapestry, and her hands tightened into fists. Athena knew the truth. Arachne's work was flawless. Not just flawless, it was brave, it was bold, and it had touched something deep, something dangerous. Because in her pride, Athena could forgive a mistake. But she could not forgive being beaten, especially by a mortal, especially by a girl. With a cry of rage, Athena ripped Arachne's tapestry apart, shredding the beautiful fabric into pieces. She pointed a trembling finger at Arachne and shouted, "You may have skill, but you have no respect. You dared to show the gods shame. Now you will pay the price." The room shook. The people fled. And Arachne stood alone, her masterpiece ruined, her heart crushed, her future uncertain. The room was silent. The crowd was gone. The tapestries were torn, and Arachne was broken. She stood beside her loom, her eyes wide with shock, her hands still trembling. She had done everything right. Her work was honest, her hands had told the truth, but now it was all in pieces, and the goddess she had once admired had destroyed it. Arachne walked away. She didn't scream, she didn't beg. She climbed to a quiet corner of her workshop, tied a rope above her, and stepped onto a stool. She felt empty, like her gift, her pride, her soul had all been taken from her. She thought, if I can't create, if I can't speak through my weaving, then who am I? But just before she stepped off, Athena appeared again. This time she didn't look angry. She looked calm, maybe even sad. She saw the girl she had just crushed, not as a rival, but as something more, a reflection, a mirror, someone bold, someone fearless, someone very much like herself. Athena raised her hand and said, "Your pride was dangerous, but your gift was real. You cannot be allowed to forget your place, but your talent will not be erased." She touched Arachne's forehead with 2 fingers, and in that moment, everything changed. Her arms and legs grew thin and long. Her skin turned dark. Her fingers stretched and split into 8. Her eyes multiplied. Her mouth disappeared. She fell from the stool, not with a scream, but with silence. Arachne was now a spider. "You wanted to weave forever," Athena said. "Now you will, you and your children and their children, spinning thread from within you, building webs that catch the light and the truth in silence." And with that, Athena vanished. From that day on, spiders wove their webs, delicate and perfect. Thread by thread, they built their own tiny worlds, and people began to say, "That spider? She must be one of Arachne's children." Because once, long ago, a girl wove stories so true and so brave that not even a goddess could forget her. Arachne told the truth. She stood by her work, and she paid a heavy price, but her story was never forgotten. This myth reminds us, speaking up isn't always safe, being honest isn't always easy, but hiding who you are is harder. You don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be a hero, just stay true to yourself and keep creating, keep trying, even when no one claps. Because your voice, your view, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.